Imagine arriving in a new world, the towering silhouette of Lady Liberty your only welcome, your heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fervent hope. For millions, this wasn't a dream, but the stark reality of Ellis Island. Their stories, often untold, are the very foundations upon which modern America was built. This is one of them. The salt-laced wind whipped across the deck of the SS Carpathia, carrying with it the mingled scents of the vast Atlantic and the faint, almost imperceptible aroma of a new land. For 15-year-old Sophia Kowalski, huddled amongst a throng of similarly anxious souls, the air tasted of both trepidation and a desperate yearning. She clutched a small, worn leather satchel containing the entirety of her earthly possessions, a few cherished photographs, a hand-stitched shawl her grandmother had made, and the brittle, folded letter from her older brother, Yannick, who had braved this journey 2 years prior. His words, though few, had been a beacon in the darkness that had enveloped their small Polish village since their parents' passing. "America is hard, little sister," he had written. "But there is opportunity here. A chance to breathe." But even as those words played in her mind, Sophia could feel the weight of the journey pressing down on her. The vast, unpredictable ocean had been both a passage and a prison. Days had blended into nights under the shadow of churning gray waves and a sky that seemed to stretch forever, sometimes stained with the golden hues of dawn, other times shrouded in brooding clouds. The constant rocking of the ship, the creaking of the wooden beams, and the smell of salt and dampness had become an unending backdrop to her existence. Seasickness had been a cruel companion to many, and Sophia had spent her share of hours bent over the railings, feeling as though her insides were being twisted. The other passengers were no strangers to suffering. Nearby, an elderly Italian woman, her gnarled hands clutching a rosary, whispered fervent prayers in a voice both desperate and soothing. Her eyes, clouded with age, seemed to see beyond the mist, perhaps peering into a hopeful future she feared she might never witness. A young Irish lad, no older than Sophia, nervously adjusted the brim of his ill-fitting cap, his pale cheeks flushed with excitement and dread. His family, now scattered across the deck, exchanged quiet, reassuring smiles that hid their own anxieties. And there was the Russian family, their faces pale with exhaustion, huddled together for warmth, the father's strong arms wrapped protectively around his shivering children. Sophia watched them, feeling a strange comfort in their presence. These strangers, each from different lands, spoke languages she barely understood, yet their eyes, their gestures, their whispered prayers, all spoke of a shared longing. They were not just travelers on a ship. They were dreamers caught in the same tide of hope and fear, tossed about by the same winds of destiny. Sophia's own journey had begun in a quiet, impoverished village where the fields seemed to stretch endlessly beneath a sky that seldom smiled. Orphaned young, she had known hunger, the ache of lost childhood, and the constant toil that had bent her small frame. Yet even amidst the backbreaking labor, Yannick's letters had been her light. He wrote of the bustling streets of New York, of factories belching steam but offering wages, of tenement buildings crowded but alive with the chatter of dozens of languages. When Yannick's letter had arrived with a small sum of money, barely enough to buy passage, it had been both a promise and a test. To leave was to abandon everything she knew, to place her fragile hopes on a ship bound for a land she had never seen. But to stay was to remain trapped in a life of endless struggle. So, clutching that letter like a lifeline, Sophia had boarded the Carpathia, leaving behind the familiar faces, the cold churchyard where her parents lay, and the whispered goodbyes of neighbors who feared they might never see her again. The journey had been a trial. Food was scarce, the damp cold seeped into her bones, and the endless stretch of gray water threatened to swallow her courage. But beneath the discomfort and fear, something else had begun to grow, a sense of resilience. Sophia found herself listening to the stories shared in quiet corners of the ship, of lost loves, of wars escaped, of dreams yet to be realized. She even struck a hesitant friendship with the Irish boy Liam, who spoke of his brother who had found work in a factory and promised to send for him. Then, one misty morning, a murmur rippled through the deck. Sophia stood on her toes, craning her neck, and there it was, a figure rising from the mist. A colossal, green shape, growing clearer with each passing moment. The Statue of Liberty. Gasps filled the air, and then a hush, as if the statue's towering presence commanded reverence. Tears blurred Sophia's vision. In that moment, the endless, harrowing journey seemed almost worth it. This was the promise Yannick had spoken of, a land where even the weary were welcomed. But the journey wasn't over. As the Carpathia drew closer to shore, Sophia heard whispers of Ellis Island, the gateway, they called it, but also the test. For many, the joy of seeing the statue would be followed by the agony of waiting in long lines, of facing stern officials who would decide their fate with a single stamp. Would they be allowed in? Would they be sent back? Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. She clutched her satchel tighter, her brother's letter crinkling beneath her fingers. As the ship docked, a strange stillness fell over the crowd. Mothers soothed crying infants, fathers straightened their coats, and young men adjusted their hats. Sophia closed her eyes for a brief moment, breathing in the mingled scents of sea, sweat, and something else, something she chose to believe was hope. This was her chance, her moment. Her heart whispered a prayer, not in the polished words of the priest she had known, but in the raw, trembling voice of a girl who had crossed an ocean chasing a dream. The arrival at Ellis Island was a sensory overload. The moment Sophia stepped off the SS Carpathia and onto the crowded docks, she was swallowed by a sea of humanity, a swirling, chaotic mass of hope, fear, and desperate anticipation. The great hall of Ellis Island loomed ahead, an imposing structure of red brick and towering windows, but it was the noise that struck her first. A cacophony of 100 different languages echoed off the high, vaulted ceilings, each word a thread in a tapestry of dreams and stories. Voices rose and fell in a chaotic symphony, mothers soothing crying infants, men calling out to loved ones they had been separated from, and officials barking orders in clipped, hurried tones. It was a world away from the relative quiet of the long, oppressive sea voyage. Sophia clutched her satchel tightly, her fingers aching from the strain, but she could not bring herself to loosen her grip. That satchel was all she had, a handful of cherished photographs, a shawl her grandmother had stitched with trembling hands, and the brittle letter from her brother Yannick. It was her past, her present, and her only connection to the future she had crossed an ocean to find. Her heart raced with each step she took, carried along by the flow of the crowd, her small frame jostled and pushed but never losing sight of the narrow path ahead. To her left, an elderly Italian woman whispered frantic prayers, her rosary beads clicking like a countdown to fate. To her right, a tall, nervous German man dabbed at his sweat-soaked brow, his lips moving in silent rehearsals of his answers to the officials. The first trial came quickly, the medical inspection. Doctors, their faces a mask of detachment, moved like shadows among the throng. They examined eyes for trachoma, checked scalps for lice, and peered into mouths as though searching for hidden secrets. Sophia's stomach twisted as she saw a young girl, no older than herself, marked with a crude chalk on her coat. The girl's mother began to wail, her cries swallowed by the relentless tide of bodies. The chalk marks were a silent sentence: H for heart condition, L for lameness, E for eye problems, and those marked were pulled aside for further scrutiny. Sophia's breath caught in her chest as a doctor's cold fingers lifted her eyelids, his expression unreadable. But in a heartbeat he moved on, leaving her coat untouched. Relief washed over her, but she dared not pause. To stop was to be swallowed by the crowd. Next came the legal interviews, another gauntlet. A long line stretched before her, and Sophia's legs ached, but she forced herself to stand tall. The room buzzed with anxious murmurs, the rhythmic scratching of pens on paper, and the steady drone of questioning officials. Sophia's turn came, and she stood before a stern-faced man, his gray eyes peering at her over wire-rimmed glasses. "Name?" he asked, his voice sharp, cutting through the noise around them. "Sophia Kowalski," she managed, though her voice quivered. "Country of origin?" "Poland." "Purpose of travel?" "To live with my brother, Yannick Kowalski. He is in New York." She fumbled with her satchel, pulling out Yannick's letter, its creased, yellowing paper a lifeline. The official glanced at it, his eyes briefly softening before they returned to their stern focus. "Do you have any money?" he asked. Sophia opened her satchel, revealing the few coins she had managed to save. His gaze lingered on them for a moment before he nodded. "Very well. Next!" He stamped a small white card and handed it to her, admitted. A wave of relief so profound washed over Sophia that her knees nearly buckled. But she caught herself, clutching the card as if it might dissolve in her grasp. Around her, others were not so fortunate. A woman sobbed as her child was taken for further medical checks. A young man's voice broke as he pleaded with an official who shook his head, his fate hanging in the balance. Sophia realized that this place was more than a gateway. It was a judge, a ruthless decider of dreams. For some, it was the Isle of Hope. For others, the Island of Tears. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, there were moments of kindness. A young French girl shared a piece of stale bread with a shivering Russian boy. An elderly man, his face lined with age, murmured gentle words to a sobbing woman in a language Sophia did not understand, but the comfort was clear. Despite the barriers of language, they were all connected, bound together by their shared longing for a chance, a new life, a future worth fighting for. When Sophia finally stepped out of the towering halls of Ellis Island, the gray light of an overcast sky greeted her, but it felt like sunlight on her face. In her hand she clutched the precious card marked admitted. Her breath came in short, trembling gasps, not from fear, but from the realization that she had done it. The Island of Tears had, for her, become the Isle of Hope. But the journey was far from over. Ahead of her lay New York City, vast, bustling, and filled with possibilities. Somewhere in that maze of towering buildings and crowded streets was Yannick. Somewhere in that city was the life she had dreamed of. Sophia squared her shoulders, tucking Yannick's letter safely back into her satchel. She had survived the voyage, faced the tests, and crossed the threshold of Ellis Island. But now, she would have to navigate the maze of the new world. The next chapter of her story was about to begin. Stepping off the ferry onto the bustling streets of Manhattan was like entering another world, a world that seemed to pulse with an energy Sophia had never known. The roar of the city surrounded her, the constant clatter of horse-drawn carriages alongside the early rumble of sputtering automobiles, the shouts of vendors hawking their wares on crowded sidewalks, and the endless murmur of voices in a dozen languages. The buildings towered above her, scraping the sky, their upper floors lost in the gray mist that lingered from the morning rain. Sophia's wide, astonished eyes drank in the sight, but her grip on Yannick's letter remained firm, her thumb tracing the worn, creased edges as though it were a lifeline. Yannick's address was scrawled in familiar, hurried handwriting, but finding it in the labyrinth of New York's Lower East Side was a challenge. Narrow, bustling streets twisted and turned, lined with crowded tenements and bustling shops with signs she could barely read. The scent of fresh bread mingled with the pungent aroma of fish, and the shouts of children playing in the alleyways rose above the steady hum of the city. Sophia's heart raced with a mix of awe and anxiety, but she forced herself to press on, her feet aching from the uneven cobblestones. Then, just as she was beginning to fear she was lost, she saw him. Yannick stood in the doorway of a narrow, weathered building, his face leaner and more weathered than she remembered, his dark hair streaked with gray, but his eyes, warm, bright, and unmistakably familiar, were the same. Their reunion was not a rush of words but a quiet, fierce embrace. Sophia felt the tension in her body melt away as Yannick's arms wrapped around her, his rough hands gently patting her back. No words were needed, their shared grief, their struggles, their unspoken hopes all passed between them in that brief, silent moment. He led her up the narrow, creaking staircase to his apartment, a cramped, dimly lit space shared with 3 other Polish immigrants. The ceiling was low, the walls faded with age, but to Sophia, it felt like a palace. It was a place where she was safe, where she belonged. Yannick worked in a garment factory, a grueling job that consumed most of his daylight hours. He explained the harsh realities of life in America, the fierce competition for jobs, the struggle to learn English, the constant effort to stretch every dollar. Yet, even amidst the hardships, there was a spark of pride in his voice. "Here, we are free, Sophia. Not always safe, not always happy, but free to work, to earn, to dream," he told her, his eyes shining with that fierce determination she remembered so well. Sophia wasted no time trying to make herself useful. At first, she took on any job she could find, scrubbing floors in wealthier neighborhoods, helping in a local bakery where the smell of fresh bread almost made her forget her exhaustion. The work was hard, her fingers raw from scrubbing, her feet sore from standing, but with each coin she earned, she felt a growing sense of pride. She also struggled with the language, her Polish accent a constant reminder that she was an outsider, but she listened carefully, repeating new words to herself, determined to master this strange, sprawling tongue. The Lower East Side was a world of its own, a vibrant, chaotic tapestry of immigrants from every corner of Europe. Italian families ran noisy, bustling shops, their laughter spilling into the streets. Irish pubs echoed with music and song late into the night. Russian men with somber faces gathered on street corners, sharing whispered conversations. Sophia learned to navigate this world, to savor its many flavors and sounds, but also to guard herself. Not everyone was kind, and there were moments when she felt the sting of prejudice, the muttered insults she barely understood, the mocking laughter of those who saw her as just another foreigner. But for every cruel word, there was a moment of kindness. A warm loaf of bread gifted by the baker's wife, a gentle smile from the old Italian man who sold flowers on the corner. Yannick and Sophia became part of the immigrant community's quiet network of support. The Polish church became a refuge, a place where familiar hymns and whispered prayers offered comfort. Yannick introduced her to his friends, men and women who had come from the same villages, who shared stories of the old country, who laughed and danced and wept together in the cramped tenement apartments. Sophia learned that survival here was not just about hard work, but about connections, about being there for one another. It was about building a home, not just within the walls of their apartment, but in the hearts of those who shared their struggles. But not all days were filled with hope. There were nights when Sophia lay awake on her narrow cot, her mind filled with memories of her parents, of the quiet fields of Poland, of her grandmother's gentle voice. Homesickness gnawed at her, a hollow ache that would not fade. And there were moments when fear threatened to overwhelm her, the fear of failing, of never truly belonging, of losing Yannick to the relentless grind of factory work. Yet Sophia persevered. She learned to balance the ache of the past with the promise of the future. She began to dream again, of finding better work, of perhaps one day opening her own bakery, where the scent of fresh bread would draw customers from every corner. She dreamed of building a life that would make her parents proud, a life where she and Yannick would not just survive, but thrive. One crisp autumn morning, as Sophia stepped out onto the bustling street, the cool breeze tangling her dark hair, she felt a quiet, fierce determination. She was not just another immigrant lost in the vast city. She was Sophia Kowalski, a girl who had crossed an ocean, who had braved Ellis Island, who had found her brother and carved out a place in this chaotic, crowded world. And she was just beginning. "Come on, Sophia!" Yannick's voice called from the narrow doorway, his smile bright against the morning light. Sophia smiled back, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. The city stretched out before her, loud, unpredictable, but full of promise. And with her brother by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. The energy and ambition of the immigrant communities rippled outwards, permeating the very fabric of American society. In the bustling factories of the Northeast, immigrants provided the tireless labor that fueled the Industrial Revolution. Irish and Italian workers built the railroads that crisscrossed the nation, connecting distant landscapes and facilitating trade. German immigrants brought their skills in brewing and craftsmanship, enriching the burgeoning cities. Jewish immigrants, often fleeing persecution, established businesses and contributed significantly to the arts and sciences. Each wave of newcomers brought with them unique skills, traditions, and perspectives that gradually wove themselves into the American identity. Sophia found work in a textile mill, where the rhythmic clatter of the looms became the constant backdrop to her days. The vast, dimly lit hall buzzed with the relentless hum of machinery, a mechanical symphony that drowned out most conversations. The air was thick with cotton dust, the scent of machine oil, and the faint, stale odor of sweat from countless tired workers. Sophia's fingers moved with a practiced, nimble speed, guiding the threads, mending broken strands, and keeping the looms in motion. Her back ached, her hands were rough, and the hours seemed endless, but each day she returned home with a sense of pride. She was earning her way. It wasn't just the work that defined her days. It was the friendships she forged, women from Italy, Ireland, Russia, and Poland, all united by the shared struggle of factory life. They whispered stories over the clatter of the looms, shared stale bread during brief breaks, and offered quiet support in times of despair. Sophia's English improved through these whispered conversations, her accent softening, her vocabulary growing. And when Yannick brought home newspapers, she would carefully trace the letters, asking him to help her understand the strange, twisting words. It was a slow, sometimes frustrating process, but Sophia was determined. This language was a key to better opportunities, to understanding, to truly becoming part of this new world. Beyond the factories and the fields, immigrants like Sophia and Yannick were not just laborers. They were builders of culture. The Lower East Side was a vibrant mosaic of sounds and scents. On any given night, the air would be filled with the strains of Italian opera, the lively jigs of Irish folk music, the somber chants of Russian prayers, and the sweet melodies of Yiddish songs. Sophia found herself swept up in this cultural tapestry. She tasted spicy Italian sausages, learned a few steps of an Irish dance, and smiled at the elderly Jewish couple who always greeted her warmly in the crowded marketplace. But the immigrant experience was not only about survival and cultural exchange. It was also about change, about fighting for a better future. The factories where Sophia and so many others toiled were not just places of work, they were battlegrounds for workers' rights. When whispers of a strike spread through the textile mill, Sophia found herself torn, fearful of losing her job but also aware of the injustice of the long hours, the low pay, and the unsafe conditions. She listened as older workers spoke of the need to stand together, of the power of solidarity. These weren't just words, they were a lifeline for the exploited, the mistreated, the voiceless. Sophia saw courage in the eyes of those who spoke out, who demanded fair treatment, who risked everything for the chance at a better life. Some of her friends were active in these movements, attending secret meetings, carrying leaflets, whispering of change. For Sophia, this was a new world, a world where even the poorest, the most downtrodden, could raise their voices. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. She wasn't just part of a new country, she was part of something bigger, a fight for dignity, for fairness, for a chance to be more than just a faceless worker. And as Sophia's world expanded, so too did her dreams. She began to imagine a life beyond the textile mill, a life where she might own a small bakery, where the smell of fresh bread would draw in customers, where her hard work would be her own. She shared this dream with Yannick, who smiled, his rough hand resting on her shoulder. "Keep dreaming, Sophia," he whispered. "Dreams are what brought us here." But dreams alone were not enough. Every day was a struggle, a test of endurance. Sophia watched friends fall ill, saw workers injured by the unrelenting machines, and felt the crushing weight of homesickness in her quiet moments. Yet she persevered, not just for herself, but for Yannick, for the promise of a future they were building together. This was the true spirit of the immigrant journey, not just a story of hardship, but a story of resilience, of courage, of hope. Sophia was not just surviving, she was shaping her own destiny. She was becoming not just an immigrant, but an American, one heartbeat at a time. Years passed. Sophia, now fluent in English and possessing a quiet strength, found love with a young Italian immigrant named Marco, whom she met at a neighborhood gathering. Marco, a skilled carpenter, shared her dreams of building a life in this new land. Their courtship was simple, filled with shared meals, walks in the city parks, and whispered conversations about their hopes for the future. They married in a small ceremony surrounded by their friends from the immigrant community, a testament to the bonds they had forged in this new world. Life for Sophia and Marco was a delicate dance of hard work and quiet moments of joy. Their days began before dawn, Marco heading to various carpentry jobs while Sophia continued working in the textile mills. They were saving diligently, every penny tucked away with a singular dream in mind, a woodworking shop of their own. But it was not an easy road. They faced periods of economic hardship, when factory slowdowns meant fewer hours for Sophia, and Marco's work was scarce in the colder months. The bitter winds of winter seemed to seep not just into their small tenement apartment, but also into their spirits. Yet, love gave them strength. Evenings were a sanctuary, where Marco would tell Sophia stories of his childhood in Italy, of the olive groves and the songs his mother used to sing. Sophia would share memories of her family, of the field she once worked in Poland, of the soft voice of her grandmother. Together, they dreamed of a future beyond the cramped tenement walls. Sophia's sharp mind and Marco's skilled hands were their greatest assets, and they knew it. Not everyone who passed through Ellis Island found such happiness. Some struggled to adapt, their dreams clashing with the harsh realities of urban life. Sophia often saw the weary faces of those who shared her journey, men who had come with dreams but now lined the streets looking for work, women who aged too quickly under the burden of endless labor, children who seemed to grow up too fast amidst the clamor of the crowded city. These were the stories of loss and disappointment, the darker side of the immigrant experience, a reminder of the immense courage it took to leave everything behind and start anew, with no guarantee of success. But Sophia and Marco were not ones to give in to despair. They became part of the thriving immigrant community, leaning on the support of friends who had become like family. Marco began taking on private carpentry jobs on weekends, crafting ornate furniture for wealthier clients. His reputation for quality work grew, and Sophia, ever resourceful, managed the small but growing earnings with care. She would keep a ledger, her neat handwriting recording every coin saved, every expense carefully considered. As the years passed, their dream of a woodworking shop slowly began to materialize. Marco's skilled hands crafted beautiful furniture, intricately carved chairs, elegant cabinets, sturdy tables, while Sophia's sharp mind managed the growing business. They worked side by side, Marco with his tools and Sophia with her ledgers and customer orders. Their shop was modest at first, a tiny rented space on a busy street, but it was theirs. The smell of freshly cut wood mingled with the warmth of their laughter as they worked together, and it felt like a sanctuary from the bustling city outside. Their success was not just their own, it was a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the immigrant spirit, a tangible example of how those who arrived with nothing could, through hard work and determination, build something lasting. Sophia and Marco's story, like so many others that began at Ellis Island, was a testament to the enduring human desire for a better life, a life where dreams could take root and flourish in the fertile soil of a new nation. The next generation, the children of the immigrants who had passed through Ellis Island, grew up straddling two worlds. They were American, born and raised in this land, yet they also carried the heritage and traditions of their parents' homelands. This unique position often created both challenges and opportunities. They navigated the complexities of assimilation, learning English as their first language while often speaking their parents' native tongue at home. They absorbed American culture while also cherishing the stories, the food, and the values of their families. Sophia and Marco's children, Elena and Leo, were very much a part of this new generation. They spoke English fluently, excelled in American schools, and embraced many aspects of American culture. Yet, they also knew the stories of their parents' journey, the hardships they had overcome, and the sacrifices they had made. Sophia and Marco ensured that Elena and Leo understood their Polish and Italian heritage, sharing family recipes, telling stories of their childhoods, and instilling in them a deep appreciation for where they came from. For Elena and Leo, this dual identity was both a gift and a challenge. At school, they were American, blending seamlessly with their classmates, playing baseball in the dusty city parks, and singing the national anthem with pride. But at home, they were the children of immigrants, honoring traditions that set them apart. Sunday dinners were a mix of Italian pasta and Polish pierogi, the aroma of garlic and herbs mingling with the scent of fresh baked bread. The stories they heard were of two distant lands, Marco's tales of the Italian countryside, of olive groves and sunlit fields, and Sophia's memories of Poland, of snowy winters and the warmth of family gatherings. Yet there were moments of tension. Elena sometimes felt embarrassed when her mother's accent drew stares at the market. Leo struggled with teachers who mispronounced his last name, their fumbling attempts a constant reminder of his foreign roots. But these challenges also made them resilient. They learned to stand up for themselves, to celebrate their uniqueness, and to embrace the strength that came from knowing two worlds. As they grew, Elena's love for learning flourished. Inspired by her parents' stories of perseverance, she decided to become a teacher, wanting to help other children of immigrants navigate the world with confidence. Her classroom was a place of acceptance, where stories from different cultures were celebrated, and where every child felt seen. Leo, on the other hand, had a natural curiosity for how things worked. He pursued engineering, his sharp mind and steady hands reminiscent of Marco's carpentry skills. He worked his way through college, taking on part-time jobs to fund his education, his parents' sacrifices never far from his mind. His designs, first for local factories and later for city infrastructure, helped shape the growing metropolis around him. But even as they built their own lives, Elena and Leo remained deeply connected to their heritage. They continued to visit their parents every Sunday, bringing their own children who listened wide-eyed to the same stories they had grown up with. Sophia and Marco watched with pride as their family grew, the next generation carrying forward the spirit of hope and resilience that had brought them to America. Elena and Leo's successes were not just personal achievements, they were the fulfillment of a dream that had begun with a crowded ship crossing the Atlantic, with a tearful reunion at Ellis Island, and with years of struggle and sacrifice. Sophia and Marco's story, like that of so many immigrants, was a story of perseverance, of love, and of the enduring hope that in America, dreams could come true. The impact of the immigrants who passed through Ellis Island continues to resonate through American society today. Their descendants are woven into the fabric of every aspect of American life, their contributions often unseen but profoundly felt. The cultural richness, the economic dynamism, the intellectual vitality of the United States owes a significant debt to the millions who arrived on those shores seeking a better life. Sophia and Marco's grandchildren grew up hearing stories of Ellis Island, tales that sometimes felt like distant history, yet were deeply personal. They learned about the arduous journey, the fear and uncertainty, but also the unwavering hope and the determination to build a new life. These stories were not just family folklore. They were a part of their identity, a reminder of where they came from and the resilience that ran through their veins. Around the dinner table, as the aroma of Italian pasta mingled with the scent of Polish pierogi, the grandchildren listened wide-eyed as Sophia and Marco's children, Elena and Leo, recounted their parents' struggles and triumphs. It was a living legacy, a story that connected generations. The legacy of Ellis Island is not just about the past, it's about the ongoing story of immigration and its vital role in shaping the nation. Each new wave of immigrants, though facing different challenges, carries with them the same fundamental desires: opportunity, freedom, and the chance to build a better future for themselves and their families. The echoes of Ellis Island can be heard in the voices of today's newcomers, in their dreams and their struggles, in their contributions to American society. Whether it is a young engineer from India designing the latest software, a family from Mexico opening a bustling restaurant, or a doctor from Nigeria providing essential healthcare in undeserved communities, the immigrant spirit continues to drive the nation forward. Sophia and Marco's grandchildren, now adults themselves, found that the stories of Ellis Island were more than just memories, they were lessons. They understood that the struggles of their grandparents were mirrored in the challenges faced by modern immigrants. They became advocates for compassion and inclusion, volunteering with organizations that helped refugees, supporting policies that recognized the value of diversity, and ensuring that the stories of immigrants were not forgotten. For them, Honoring their heritage meant not only remembering the past but also standing up for the rights and dignity of those who continued to walk a similar path. Preserving the stories of Ellis Island is crucial because they are the stories of America itself. They remind us of our roots, of the diverse origins that have made this nation what it is. They highlight the courage and resilience of those who left everything behind to pursue a dream. And they serve as a powerful reminder of the ongoing need for empathy, understanding, and a welcoming spirit towards those who seek to build their lives on American soil. Schools, museums, and cultural organizations continue to preserve the history of Ellis Island, using photographs, letters, and personal accounts to keep these stories alive. The grandchildren often visited Ellis Island, now a museum, standing in the grand hall where their grandparents had once stood, imagining the fear and hope that must have filled the air. They walked through the exhibits, saw the worn suitcases, the faded photographs, and the passenger lists that bore the names of those who had come seeking a new beginning. For them, it was not just a museum, it was a sacred place, a monument to the strength of the human spirit. But the legacy of Ellis Island is not just a story of the past, it is a reminder of the ever-present contributions of immigrants. Sophia and Marco's great-grandchildren, growing up in a diverse, multicultural America, learned to celebrate their heritage while embracing the richness of a society shaped by countless different cultures. They were a living testament to the promise of Ellis Island, a promise that continues to unfold in the stories of each new generation that arrives, bringing with them the same dreams, the same hope, and the same unwavering spirit. The stories of Ellis Island are not just historical accounts. They are living narratives that continue to shape the American identity. The millions who passed through its gates, often with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a fervent hope in their hearts, left an indelible mark on every facet of American society. Their labor-fueled industries, their cultures-enriched communities, and their dreams helped to define the very essence of the American ideal. What began as a simple immigration station transformed into a symbol of resilience, courage, and the enduring human spirit. Sophia and Marco's descendants, like countless others, went on to contribute to the tapestry of American life in countless ways. Some became teachers, nurturing the minds of future generations. Others became entrepreneurs, creating businesses that served their communities and provided livelihoods for others. They became doctors, engineers, artists, and writers, each drawing upon the strength of their family's story, a strength forged in the struggle and hope of the immigrant experience. They inherited not just the memories of hardship but also the lessons of perseverance and unity. In the classrooms, in the boardrooms, in the halls of government, and in the creative arts, the spirit of Ellis Island lived on. But the legacy of Ellis Island is not just about the successes of those who passed through. It is also about the values they carried with them, values of hard work, compassion, and the belief in a better future. These values were passed down from generation to generation, a quiet but powerful inheritance that shaped their character and guided their choices. Sophia and Marco's great-grandchildren, now living in a world vastly different from that of their ancestors, still feel the echoes of Ellis Island. They know the stories, they understand the sacrifices, and they carry with them a sense of gratitude and responsibility. Ellis Island is more than just a place, it is a testament to the American promise, the idea that anyone, regardless of where they come from, can build a new life through determination and courage. The faded photographs, the worn suitcases, and the weathered passenger logs preserved in the museum are not just artifacts, they are fragments of countless dreams, whispers of countless voices, each one a testament to the courage it took to leave behind the familiar for the unknown. The grand hall where Sophia and so many others once stood, waiting in anxious anticipation, is now a place of reflection, a reminder of the journey that so many undertook. As Sophia and Marco's family continued to grow, their story became a cherished part of their family heritage. At family gatherings, tales of their journey were told with pride, not just as a history lesson but as a source of inspiration. Their descendants understood that they were part of a much larger story, a story of millions of people from all corners of the globe who came together to build a new world. They honored that story by embracing the values of kindness, perseverance, and respect for others. The story of Ellis Island is not just a chapter in American history, it is an ongoing narrative. New generations of immigrants continue to arrive, bringing with them new dreams, new talents, and new perspectives. They face their own struggles, overcome their own challenges, and contribute to the nation in their own unique ways. Just as Sophia and Marco's story began with a journey across the Atlantic, countless other stories are unfolding in the present day, each one adding to the rich, ever-evolving mosaic of American life. In the end, the story of Sophia and Marco is a reminder that the American dream is not just about material success, but about the courage to hope, the strength to endure, and the compassion to uplift others. It is a reminder that every generation stands on the shoulders of those who came before, and that the spirit of Ellis Island, the spirit of resilience, of dreams pursued against all odds, lives on in the hearts of all who continue to seek a better life on these shores. Sophia and Marco's journey was just one thread in the grand tapestry of the American experience, but it is a thread that shines brightly, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. And so, we come to the end of this journey through the untold stories of Ellis Island. We've seen the hardships, the triumphs, and the enduring legacy of those who dared to dream of a better life, and, in doing so, helped build the America we know today. Their courage, their resilience, and their unwavering hope continue to inspire us. It's a powerful reminder that the story of America is a story of immigrants, of people from all walks of life coming together to forge a new destiny. Their voices echo through time, reminding us of the importance of empathy, understanding, and the enduring power of the human spirit. If you found this story moving and insightful, please take a moment to show your support. Give this video a like, leave a comment below to share your thoughts or any family stories you might have related to Ellis Island or immigration, and subscribe to my channel for more captivating stories from history. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all my latest uploads, and you'll be helping me to continue bringing these important narratives to light. Thank you for watching, take care, see you in the next video.